Hey, what do you think? I am really happy to be back. I've had a little hiatus from Jam and All, and it's really good to be back. And I would like to thank all of you for joining us as we start our new season. It's our 21st season with Jam and All, of putting together interfaith conversations around topics that affect us personally, that affect our spiritual communities, and really affect the whole world. So for those of you who don't remember who I am or never met me, my name is Darby Line. I am on the board of directors of Jam and All Interfaith, and I'm also an ordained interfaith minister, and I proudly serve on the staff of Unity of Pompano Beach Spiritual Center. And it really is a pleasure and an honor to be your host this evening. I'd like to say on behalf of Jam and All Interfaith, I'd like to extend a special greeting to those who have been celebrating and who are currently still celebrating holy days this month of October, especially our Jewish friends and our Hindu friends. And as we are sitting comfortably in our homes and our offices with internet and air conditioning and electricity, let's remember in our hearts those who don't have these wonderful things, especially right now in the aftermath of Hurricane Ian. You know, there's so much going on in the world right now. I would like to just invite all of us to just sort of bring ourselves into a good center place. If you're comfortable, just close your eyes and settle in the seat where you are, and just be aware of the seat. Be aware of being supported. And feel the air on your skin. Is it cool or warm? Maybe there's a breeze. Be aware of whatever scents might be in the room or ambient noises around you. All the things that are around you, supporting you and surrounding you right now in this present moment. And as those things that have been on your mind during the day start to creep into your mind, maybe it was the news, or maybe something at work, or school, or kids, or stress, or happiness, or joy, all those things that you had when you sat down for this call tonight. Just welcome them in, hold them gently in your hand, and if you'd like, I invite you to just put them in a little box in front of you. Tell them you'll be back. You're not going to leave them forever. You'll be back. But put a little lid on that. And if you want, you can put that box on the floor beside you, or you can put it up on a shelf in a closet and shut the closet door. They're going to be there when we're done, but they're not needed right now. What we need right now is your open heart and your open mind and your spirit of understanding, cooperation, and harmony. So just sit in this very moment, and this moment, and the next. And in gratitude, I invite you to take a nice deep breath. Breathe it out. And when you're comfortable doing so, open your eyes again. And in this wonderful, wonderful present moment, let's begin. So we'll begin this evening by introducing someone you have probably met already, our wonderful, wonderful friend, Reverend Todd Humphrey, who is our Zoom host for this evening and for, I think, every other online event that we've had over the last couple of years. He does all the magic behind the scenes that makes it happen so that we can do what we're here to do. He's going to be back in a little while to talk to you about how we do our breakout groups and so on. But wave hello, say hi, Reverend Todd.
Hi, Reverend Todd.
Thank you. Always a joy to see your wonderful face. So Jam and All, as I said before, is celebrating 21 years of connecting people through conversation and education. And our mission at Jam and All is to bridge the differences between people of all spiritual paths and faith traditions so that we can come to coexist peacefully with knowledge and understanding of each other. And so it's kind of interesting that we chose to begin this 21st year with a topic that is on the minds and hearts of many, many people. And it's a topic that's probably as confusing as it is controversial. And even though it's white Christian nationalism, it really affects people of all faiths. Some people say it's based on racism. Others say it's just following God's word. Some people say it's political. Other people say, well, no, it's biblical. So what do you think? I kind of have a feeling that each one of you has some thoughts about this, or you would not have been on this call tonight. So fortunately for us, we have a very knowledgeable guest to talk with us about the topic, share some of his extensive research and study, and to help us understand what this is all about, where it came from, what its effects are and can be on us and on our country and on the world. And then in true Jaminal fashion, we will divide up into randomly, some may say divinely assigned small groups for discussion, to share our insights and experiences with each other. And then we'll come back together to share with the large group. So let me tell you a little bit about our speaker this evening. Dr. Greg Carey is a native of Alabama, but he's coming to us tonight from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Since 1999, he has been a professor at Lancaster Theological Seminary, which is a richly diverse ecumenical graduate school of theology and an official, open and affirming seminary. He's a member of the United Church of Christ, and he holds a PhD in religion from Vanderbilt University. He teaches courses on the New Testament and on biblical and contextual interpretation, as well as a doctoral seminar devoted to research methodologies. He is the author and co-author of 10 books. He's often invited to speak at churches and civic organizations about white Christian nationalism, which he has focused on as a concerned Christian. And I want to interject just a personal note here. I too consider myself to be a concerned Christian. And as someone who was raised in a very loving, affirming and inclusive Christian family and faith, I am really looking forward to gaining clarity and understanding on all of this, because it's a movement that I feel it's hijacked the faith of my birth and my heart. So it is with particular eagerness, honor, and delight that I present to you this evening's guest speaker, Dr. Greg Carey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Darby, for your introduction, and Irma for our conversations and preparation, and you're welcome. Irma has sent me questions from everyone, some of which are built into the few minutes that I'll talk now, but I plan to talk for a little less than 15 minutes and then field questions and then move to small groups, if I understood the instructions just so. I saw today that at the University of North Florida, they have a podcast called How to Ruin Dinner. And it's run by the political science department with some religious studies people. So, at the interface of politics and religion, that conversation's How to Ruin Dinner, which is, my experience too. And I see, looking at the screen and overhearing the conversation, that you're a wonderfully diverse group, which means some of you have lots of experience inside Christianity and some of you won't. And so you're in different places in terms of your backgrounds for this conversation. So I'm the kind of person who doesn't like talking about things that have sharp political edges unless I'm in some kind of advocacy mode. I'm not here, but I will say this conversation gets warm quickly, as we would say in the South. So what I'll do is hop right in and share with you an image that, to my mind, communicates what white Christian nationalism is better than anything else that I can think of. And so I think you can all see it now. And you probably remember the moment. This was summer 2020. So the presidential election was going on. And in Washington, the Black Lives Matter protests were going on as they were around the country. And it was an intense time. On this particular day, then President Donald Trump made a speech, and then he used law enforcement force and some tear gas to clear a crowd so that he could walk to St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington, which is just about right next to the White House. And he posed, he didn't speak there, but he posed holding up a Bible. So why do I use this image to try to communicate what we mean by white Christian nationalism or Christian nationalism more generally? We'll get to the white part in a little bit. Well, what you see is a fusion, a graphic fusion of Christian symbolism, a church and a Bible, with politics and power, right? So in making this walk, Donald Trump is aligning himself, as he would put it, as a defender of public order over against the Black Lives Matter protest at that time. And he's attempting to communicate that not only does he stand with law and order, but he stands with the symbols of Christian believing. Now I'm going to go a couple of steps farther. In this picture, the church and the Bible are being used as props. And that may sound like a harsh judgment, but the reality is this wasn't Donald Trump's Bible. He didn't have a Bible of his own in the White House. Aides went through like multiple Bibles that people brought into a room to find one that would look and feel just right for the picture. Donald Trump is famous for not knowing the Bible. When interviewed, he's been asked, well, what would you say would be your favorite passage? And he would say, oh, I love it all. So it's not his Bible, and it's not something that he spends a lot of time with. And those of you who have church backgrounds have probably never seen someone hold a Bible just like that either, who was an active reader of it. As for the church, the Bishop of Washington issued a statement almost immediately saying, he didn't ask us if he could come, and we would have said, no, we didn't want him there. So that's what I mean by props, that there's not a communication with the church about this action. And, you know, the relationship of the former president to the Bible is a little bit complicated. But to the white point, right? This is a statement aligning Christianity against the Black Lives Matter protests that happened in the wake of the police murder of George Floyd. We've learned since that moment that Donald Trump wanted National Guard troops to fire live ammunition into the crowd to disperse it. He was extremely opposed to the Black Lives Matter protests. And so there's part of what I want to communicate is there's no way to separate Christian nationalism, the way it's working in our country now, from questions of race and conflict over race. Just very quickly, how I would define Christian nationalism is that it's a movement that argues that the United States has a special relationship with God, that God blesses the country and has a mission for the United States that are unique, that the United States should say so and declare itself a Christian nation and historically Christian. And the third part is one that's going to require a little more unpacking. The United States should govern itself according to a specific interpretation of Christian principles. So, making some guesses based on the faces I saw on the Zoom call, we're old enough to remember when there was a lot of Christian symbolism in our national civic life, even more than there is now, right? Public events, football games, NASCAR, well, NASCAR still does, but a lot of public events would begin with prayers, right? I had teachers who had asked me where I went to church. There's a lot of Christian language in public life in the United States, but Christian nationalism represents a stream of Christian views that claims to speak for all Christians, but demonstrably does not. And so that's why I say a specific interpretation of Christian principles. Again, to come back to race, one key factor in this is Christian nationalists on surveys of public opinion differ from Black Christians, with whom they largely share theology. White evangelicals and Black Christians are the farthest apart religious groups in public opinion polls. So that's kind of worth knowing. I'm going to accelerate a little bit. Well, no, I'm not. You may remember Michael Flynn, who's coming to Lancaster, Pennsylvania in a couple of weeks, who was our national security advisor, had to resign because he had lied to the FBI, was convicted and then pardoned, said, if we're going to have one nation under God, which we must, we have to have one religion, one nation under God, and one religion under God. But again, which Christianity do we want, right? That covers a lot, and those of us who are Christian, many of us, don't want a Christian nation either, right? Don't think that that's the best thing, but that's the argument. And so you'll hear in the movement this language of taking dominion over the 7 mountains of culture. You see the quote with this graphic, take possession of the land. Business, government, family, religion, media, education, entertainment. The idea is that this group of Christians wants dominion over all these things, and they're very active, not just in national politics, but check out your local school board and see how many Christian nationalists are on the school board or running for it, and what their agendas are there. Back a little bit to race, and I'll bring it together pretty soon. White Christian nationalists, according to Philip Gorski and Samuel Perry, sincerely believe that whites and Christians are the most persecuted groups in America. They think they're defending their faith because the rest of us are attacking them. And that's what their leaders tell them. This is Samuel Perry, whom I just referenced, and Andrew Whitehead, 2 evangelical sociologists, constructed a survey model to identify persons who identify strongly with Christian nationalist values. And if they do, on the bottom part of the scale, they score a 24 for really strong Christian nationalism. And if they're like me and don't agree with much of anything that's Christian nationalist, they'll be a 0 or a 1 or a 2. If you ask them, do you think voting is a right or a privilege? Notice that the line moves directly up in relationship to how strongly someone would identify as Christian nationalist, to the point that for Christian nationalists, over 50% think voting is a privilege rather than a right. This is important because it means that Christian nationalism is inherently an anti-democratic movement. It's an attempt for some Christians with a particular agenda that we could talk about to have dominion over society. And in that way, participation by other people who don't share that point of view is not relevant, and voting not relevant either. A lot of the politicians you're seeing right now who are running to be Secretary of State in their states, who are deniers of the most recent presidential election, check and see, they're very likely to be Christian nationalists, for example. So there was a lot of Christian nationalist symbolism and involvement in the January 6th attack on the Capitol, and a lot of activity at local and state levels out of this movement. So that is, as quick as it can get, in my opinion, an introduction to what Christian nationalism is, why I would call it white Christian nationalism, and what it looks like when it's sort of out in the wild. And that's a good time for me to pause and ask, what kind of conversations you'd like to have on the topic. And is it Todd who facilitates that? Darby, Irma? I don't know.
I didn't know we were going to be doing that, but that's fine, because I'm sitting here listening to you going, wait a minute, how can this be? And totally agreeing with what you're saying. But the question that pops up in my mind is, what do we do about it? And I would guess that other people have a similar question. So Todd, I guess if you have a question, maybe raise your hand, or somehow, Todd, can you recognize people to do that?
I see Opal and Irma have hands up.
Okay.
Yes. Let's go ahead and go to Opal right away. Opal, will you unmute yourself? You should be able to now. There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Gregg, would you go ahead at this point?
Thank you for being here, Dr. Gregg. Is this new to the society? Or was there a seed planted some time ago and is now germinating?
That's a wonderful question. In some ways, it is as far back as white people landing here, right? That some of the white people who landed here specifically wanted to build a kind of Christian society along the lines they believed in. Not all did, but some did. And there is a history to the movement, and a history in the 20th century. In the 19th century, people could identify and say, we want a Christian nation, but they could argue that for different parts of the political spectrum. But over about the past 90 years, Christian nationalism has been aligned with conservative kinds of politics in the United States. And that's probably about as much as I have time to say right now, but it does have a history. And if you're interested, Julie Ingersoll would be the author that you'd be interested in. It's called Building God's Kingdom. Irma, you've been trying to hop in for a second.
No, I just wanted to make sure that the questions that were submitted to you by the individuals that registered are being answered.
Okay.
Do you have that list that I sent you?
I do have that list.
Okay. If you could address those questions.
Sure. Would Christian nationalists engage in interfaith dialogue? There's genuine research on the question. They tend to be very dogmatic. And so the kind of conversation that is, when I think of interfaith dialogue, where I'm a learner in the process, isn't natural to white Christian nationalism. That doesn't mean they wouldn't do it. They're human beings, they're individuals, but as a rule, that's not their mode of interacting. Thinking about what they draw on from within Christianity as sort of resources, they tend to be big on sort of a law and order understanding of Christianity, which means that they don't say much about Jesus. They really don't talk much about Jesus' activities of healing people, blessing people, dining with sinners, building community. Those aren't, love your neighbor, not in there. Love the migrant, not so much. Christian nationalists tend to be very anti-refugee, anti-immigrant, anti-interracial marriage, anti-transracial adoption. Those are things. So it tends to be very selective use of parts of the Bible. They tend to identify symbolically the United States with promises to Israel that we find in parts of the biblical literature. And of course, I imagine that most Jews would think, well, that's a strange thing to do. But that is a move that they often make. Wanting to come back to that list of questions for a minute. Yeah. How to respond to Christian nationalism? There are a few things. I'd say there are three levels. One, I'm going to talk politics for a minute. I just told you Christian nationalists do not value democracy or the right to vote. So this election, 2022 and 2024, are extremely important. As a movement, they've traditionally opposed public education. And so the candidate for governor in Pennsylvania wants to eliminate property taxes, which if you're in Florida sounds, oh, well, we do that. But in Pennsylvania, it's because the public school funding is based on property taxes. He wants to reset the voter rolls, delete everyone and have you start over. So they're, and you can imagine what policies would be in place with respect to sexual minorities or women's reproductive health and that sort of thing. So one level is political. It just has to be stopped. I don't want to use the wrong analogy, but Hitler had about 35% of the vote when he took power. So it's a movement that, even though it's not a majority of anything, has the ability to leverage elections. Then there's an interpersonal level, which is people you know. And, you're an interfaith discussion group. You might disagree with each other, but you're probably very constructive about it. You're not going to persuade anyone with an argument. So what I would recommend is try to stay in relationship with people. If you need to establish personal boundaries, like, look, I'm not here for that conversation, you can do it. But try to stay in relationship. Try to keep your spirit soft and pliable. Practice your spiritual disciplines. But also be clear about what you value, and not to argue, but what are the things that you care about? What is your understanding of your faith? And be ready to share that, knowing that it'll probably be rejected, but just when someone believes they represent the truth for their religion, they're not used to hearing other people say, yeah, that's not my understanding of the same thing. So I think I see Cindy's hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So you mentioned how important these upcoming elections are, and the fact that we need to pay attention to people being elected on a local level, school boards, Secretary of State, things like that. Is there any way to know whether someone is a part of or ascribes to the Christian nationalism type of thing? Are there particular organizations we could look for in their background or resume or something as we're researching candidates?
Sometimes it's that obvious, but really, a lot of the time you have to just hear what they say. And pay it. It requires a lot of vigilance. I have a former student and some friends. There's a small city outside Lancaster called Elizabethtown, and there's a genuine effort on the part of one fairly small church to take over the school board in Elizabethtown. They want to eliminate science education. And so what they've had to do to resist this is they've had to just go to every meeting, read every story, listen on the sermons from this church. There's nothing but vigilance.
Thank you.
To respond to that. Yes. I saw someone's hand up and then they disappeared from my screen. There you are.
This is Ram Tiwari, and I wanted to have a procedural question because Irma said those people who registered, they put the questions. So they should have a priority. I am okay to entertain other questions. But those who did register followed the procedure. They put the questions. So I think they should be answered first. That's my opinion, without disrespect to anyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually, when I opened the floor, I thought I had worked through almost all the questions, either in the presentation or just now. But if there are some, because I didn't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 like that, if someone would like to call attention to some, I would be fine with that too. I appreciate that comment. Yes, Fran.
Okay. you've successfully put some fear in my heart here.
That's unfortunately good.
How does such a small group become so powerful? Is it that nobody pays attention enough? Is it that they're just louder than the rest of us?
That's a great question. The number one answer to how such a small group becomes so powerful is that they're very thickly organized. They're also well funded, but they're thickly organized, and all the way to where, you know, if children who are homeschooled in Christian homeschool curriculums or going to Christian academies are getting educations that teach Christian nationalism, right? So if you're interested in that, there's a book by Catherine Stewart, who's a journalist, called The Power Worshippers, that sort of unpacks that level of organization. And then, you know, the other part is most people would rather not worry about politics. I'd rather not worry about politics. And they do. So a lot of the things that they do, you're not aware they're doing them until it's done. And that's the short answer for how.
Okay.
I see
Well,
a comment. I'm sorry.
I have a feeling we could go on and on and on. I think what we need to do at this point is to break into our groups and take this discussion to that level and then come back. And
Reverend Darby?
yes,
Darby?
yes,
This is Ben. Hi.
hi.
Yes, one of the questions was a question about the origin of this concept or perspective.
Mhm.
And I just thought I would share something with the group because we have many scholars here, you know, people who are studiers, students of history, etc. And I just put
Ben, you're now muted. You'll need to unmute again, please.
yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. So one of the ways
You're-
Sorry, Ben, you got muted again. I'm not sure who's hitting the mute button.
Oh, okay.
Now you're
So
good.
one of the ways that the scholars may want to examine this is, you know, our popular Google search. Just look up the doctrine of discovery. The doctrine of discovery is an international legal concept. It goes back to 1493. I'm sure you're familiar with that, Reverend Greg, Tracy, Carrie?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. So that may help everyone to, because the question of how can such a small group become so powerful, this is a very basic, fundamental cornerstone of Western civilization. And when you look at the writing about the doctrine of discovery, that may answer a lot of questions because it goes very far back, and it was supported by the papacy at that time, the Roman Catholic Church, which of course was the only church at that time, or not the only church at that time, but is the, again, cornerstone of Christianity for what we know as Western Christianity. Eastern Christianity, of course, has another wonderful and beautiful history, as does Western Christianity. So I just thought I would just share that with everyone, if that is helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That's important background to keep in mind for sure. It's not something that just happened overnight. It's been a long time coming. So I think at this point, we're ready to get into what Jaminol really loves to do, and that is to get into small groups and have meaningful discussions and see what we can do to share and understand each other. So each group is going to have a facilitator, and we'll try to keep the discussion on topic. And keep in mind that the purpose of Jaminol really is to educate and to foster these dialogues. So we'd like to share, if Todd can put up we have a slide on the principles of interfaith dialogue. And these were developed by Jaminol over the years to help really foster community and understanding as we get together to discuss. So just keep some of these in mind. I think that most of you are familiar with them. It's not rocket science, but it's just be authentic and be willing to take a risk every once in a while and say what you believe, and agree to disagree. That's probably a real key. And Dr. Carey had some good suggestions too, as in talking with people who are from this white Christian nationalist point of view, but also for each other as well as we're talking. So I think maybe right now, what we ought to do is have Todd come back and kind of explain how this process works.
Sure. Thank you, Reverend Darby, dear friend. Good evening, everyone, and thanks so much for being with us here tonight at Jaminol. I'm about to put you into a small breakout room, and you'll have a facilitator. We have a number of facilitators, and the name of the group is going to be who your facilitator is tonight. So you'll be able to easily identify who the facilitator for that group is. You're all going to pick one person that's going to come back. You're going to explore some of the ideas that Greg shared with us tonight and what impact that has on you and what you can carry forth into your life to make a difference so that, we can be this interfaith movement where we build bridges and we don't, tear down. And so you're going to see in just a moment an invitation. It's going to it's going to tell you to go into the breakout room, and we are going to take 30 minutes in our breakout rooms, and I'll send some notifications that you're getting ready to come back into the main room. And when we get back to the main room, everybody hold up one finger for me. Everybody hold up one finger, right? Whoever gets picked to be your spokesperson is going to come back and share one idea from your group, right? Just one idea, because we want to make sure that we get to hear from all of the groups that we have joining us tonight. And so we'll come back and we'll share one idea. Greg is going to listen to all those ideas, and then he's going to put a big bow on everything and come back and give us his final thoughts for the evening. And then we get to go forth from tonight and be the change in the world that we want to see. So in just a moment, you're going to see an invitation. So just accept that invitation into your breakout room. Welcome back, friends, and hope you had, and I'm affirming that you had great conversations in your group. And so welcome back, and we are going to get started again. Everyone picked out a reporter to come back into our main session now and share one idea that came up in your group discussion. And so I want to start with Fran. So Fran, if you would unmute yourself, and I'm going to spotlight you.
Oh boy. Okay.
Thanks, Fran. Go ahead.
Well, we had a very interesting discussion with Suzanne and Ram and Opal. And we talked about, like I said to the speaker, how scary all this is. But Ram came up with a really good nugget, and he said that Jaminol and dialogue gives us hope that we can overcome the hate and the misunderstandings. Not that we're going to change these people, but that maybe we can be organized enough to make a difference.
Excellent. Thank you so very much. There we go. So Arlene, I think that you said you're going to speak for your group. Is that correct?
Sorry, no, I just put my name at the group. Ben is going to speak for us.
Oh, wonderful. Ben, will you unmute for me?
Yes, Todd, I was drafted and I accepted to be in. Just very quickly, in our group, it was agreed that democracy is being threatened, and that one of Paula, especially, she said what she suspected is true about what is happening in the atmosphere of our social environment. And Seymour said that what we should do is vote in order to be represented, and everyone agreed we have to recover our civility. And also, we have to counteract some of the very strange ideas and unhelpful and unhealthy ideas that are circulating. And yeah, was that it, Arlene?
Sounds very good to me.
All right.
Thank you, Ben. Great points. Joe, I'm going to spotlight you now. Will you share for your group?
Certainly. First of all, my group, a very small group, but very fine, of course. We first had to express our almost shock and disbelief at what we had been learning about, and then when we were able to get past that, we touched upon this notion that these people feel, the Christian white nationalists, that they're being persecuted, and I don't know, it's kind of feel sorry for them or whatever. But then we got beyond that to really the main nugget, which we thought was that we need to listen. We need to listen to these people, not to agree with them or whatever, but just kind of so we're aware of what they're up to. Because if we're not listening, we don't know. And if we don't know, then we're in the dark. It's important not to be in the dark.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe. That is such wisdom. And there's so much more that we can do in this world when we listen. So thank you so much for bringing that wisdom to us. Cindy, we're going to turn to you to share for your group, please.
Hi, yeah, I was in a group with Vernell and Melanie, Kathy, Irving, and Renee. And our one takeaway we thought was really important was to remind people that not all conservatives, people, for example, like Liz Cheney, are part of this white Christian nationalist movement, even though that movement professes to be conservative. So it's important to remember that dialogue and interaction with some people who are conservative is not necessarily doomed to failure. There are conservative people out there that are not a part of this particular sect of the movement, where interfaith, interdenominational types of conversations might be helpful.
What a great thing to bring up, Cindy. Thank you for bringing that from your group. We are grateful. Laura Sue, you're going to report from your group, please.
Okay, great. My group was Judy, Edith, and Luz, and myself. And we were looking at the whole subject from the lens of taking care of each other and the importance of that. And when you look at that, we had to really ask the question, is white Christian nationalism actually Christian? With all the authoritarianism and top-down approach and rules. And that, we felt true Christianity, Jesus, if you look at, say, the Sermon on the Mount and other teachings, he was a socialist. It was all about caring for each other. And so, that contrast was just very obvious when we looked at it in that way.
Great point to bring up, Laura Sue. Thank you. We're hearing such great things tonight. I can't wait to hear Greg's response. We're going to turn to you now, Audrey. Share from your group for us. Hi, surprise! You're on Spotlight.
Right. Well, we were kind of taken aback that the direction that we have each, and that is Sophia, Robin, Sue, and I, the direction that we have seen the country headed in fact, we were right. And that's one of the most disconcerting things about tonight's presentation. I'm sorry to say, Dr. Carey, that democracy is threatened. We see that happening. But the thing that really struck us was that these people consider voting a privilege, not a right, and a privilege that they want to hold on to for themselves. And therefore, all of the attempts at voter fraud that go on and disenfranchising blacks, gays, women, whatever, really, the sad thing is all this makes such sense. It's a tragedy for the democracy that we have lived through. That's it.
Thank you, Audrey. Diane, I'm going to turn to you now and see what you bring to us. Hi, Diane.
Hi. We decided to take a non-political view, but in our quest to form a more perfect union, we thought people needed to embrace tolerance, kindness, empathy, love, and we felt the place to start, besides the home, is the church, the synagogue, the mosque, the temple, and the school, if the school boards will allow it. So we took a longer term view, and our children are our hope. And we're not asking them to be activists, but if they have love and kindness and tolerance in their heart, hopefully they'll pull the lever to someone who represents them.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you. Wonderful perspective to bring to us. And now we're going to turn to Doreen, who's going to have our last report tonight. Hi, Doreen.
Hi. Before I talk with my group discuss, somebody just said that we have someone like Liz Cheney who is a conservative, and conservative values don't necessarily mean white Christian nationalists. However, in my group, we had talked about how other than Liz Cheney and a few others, all the Republican senators and most of the representatives are going along with this crap and don't even talk about it or don't speak up about it. Romney doesn't, Murkowski doesn't, all the people that we used to respect, I don't know what happened to them. It's like they all became deaf and dumb. But the thing that my group was really shocked about, I guess, was how our public education is being eroded and that their aim is to really get rid of it. And I think here in Florida and a lot of the other red states, we're seeing what they're doing with the parents being in charge of curriculum and the librarians being forced to take books off the shelf. It crept up so slowly, but it crept up and all of a sudden here it is. And none of us recognized it. And our group was just talking how we possibly can get more involved, what we can do, because this country has become bizarro land. We have two different countries within our country, and we're at a loss what we can do. Voting is important, but I don't think that itself is going to do it. So if we can start some kind of movement, how we can change things on a national level, I guess we got to get started now. I'm done.
Thanks, Doreen. The truth is that none of us are done. We're just getting started with understanding that we have stuff that we have to do and things that we can do. So again, thanks everyone for your participation in the groups. I'm going to turn it back over to our host for tonight, Reverend Darby Line. Hey, Darby. You're muted, my friend.
I muted myself. There I go. Okay, sorry about that. So it always amazes me, the things that come out of these groups, and I'm more and more convinced that the things that we do here in these gatherings that we have, it's not a small thing that we're doing. I really believe that by continuing to have conversations with each other, to keep our minds open and keep our hearts open, and if we believe there's even the tiniest possibility that these conversations and a deeper understanding is going to make a difference, that's how we change the world. And I think it's a very concerning and disturbing topic, but the one group said that they used the word hope, and that's what I'm taking away from this. So thank you all for incredible work tonight. So I would like to invite our speaker back, Dr. Carey. What do you think?
Well, just very quickly, I was really encouraged to hear how many of the groups went sort of to the core of your own spiritualities to talk about kindness and gentleness and mindfulness. And I think that is, in fact, when I do the longer version of this presentation, it's the first of the last things I say. At the same time, I think we need to articulate those values in ways that are effective and organized, because we are dealing with people who are effective and organized. And so it can be as simple as saying what those values are. I want to live in a society where everyone has a place and everyone has a share. I want to live in a society where no one religious group can dominate the rest. I want, whatever it is that you believe, out of that gentle place, be willing to articulate it and live it. And then, a couple of times I heard Liz Cheney's name mentioned, and I certainly admire her integrity to stand up for what she believes in. I will note Adam Kinzinger, who is, right alongside her, is an evangelical Christian. I bet if you had asked him 4 years ago his opinions on a bunch of stuff, he would have been a Christian nationalist. A soft, kind one, right? But that would be, and what's happened is he has seen the movement up close. He's seen how it has played out in people he used to work with and admire. And he's having to make hard decisions about himself and how he relates to society. I bet he's changed his mind about a lot of things as a result of that encounter. And so just to think about the ways that you practice the gentleness and inclusion and listening that you've all talked about are absolutely important for how people you may know, they may just be kind of confused and in the middle and need that, or it may be the thing that years later, enough of it sinks into someone that they change their mind. So I wanted to underscore that part of what I heard from the groups, and express my gratitude for the generosity and kindness you've expressed to me tonight too. I'm grateful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. We are so grateful to you for spending your evening with us and getting this conversation really underway in a very significant and important way. Thank you so much. So I would just say to everyone here that if this evening has been meaningful to you, and if we're talking about a world that you would like to live in, consider being a part of Jam and All. You can join us very easily, $20 a year for you or for your whole family. And you can do that by clicking on Become a Member on our website, jamandallinterfaith.org. And speaking of getting involved, there is a new opportunity. If you know anything about social media and you have a few minutes a week that you could help Jam spread the message of Jam and All, we have a new Jam social media street team. And if that doesn't sound like fun, I don't know what does. So if you're interested in just a little bit of time a week to help us spread the message of Jam and All Interfaith, just email info@jamandalinterfaith.org and put social media team or something like that in the subject line. That would be just phenomenal. And I think we have a slide for that. We're showing that. We do. Yay, Todd. Thank you. So the other thing I wanted to mention is November, we have a very exciting thing happening. Those of you who were with us for last year, you'll remember we had a wonderful documentary that was created about our first 20 years. That was selected to be shown at the Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. Yay! So the film is going to be shown. We're going to have a reception and you're all invited. So I would like to invite Judy Kaiser, who was instrumental in making that happen, to just say a little bit about that event.
Well, I am so pleased to be part of the team that had the idea and that we could spread our message to a wider audience if we had a vehicle like a film festival. And we are very grateful to the people who helped to put together the application and get it in on time and do what we needed to do, because technology is complicated when you're transmitting a film. It's like beyond my pay scale. And we're actually so thrilled to be able to be not the first opening night of the festival, but the very next day. We are part of the beginning, the sort of breakout beginning of this year's Fort Lauderdale International Film Festival. And the showing will take place at Savor Cinema, which used to be called Cinema Paradiso. It's right in downtown Fort Lauderdale, down the street from the courthouse. So we have courthouse parking, nice big parking garage right next door. The building used to be a church. How appropriate for an interfaith organization's film, right? And we will have a reception afterwards to have some question and answers and to just have some fellowship with each other and with the new people who we will be introducing to the work of the last 20 years of Jam and All Interfaith and into the future.
Thank you, Judy. It's going to be an exciting night. Are we allowed to get all dressed up and, like a film, like on the red carpet and all that stuff? That's going to be so great. So I hope you all will join us. We'll send an email out and let you know all the details in advance of all that. So as we take our leave tonight, the discussion about kindness, it reminded me of a quote, and I don't even know who wrote this, but it was somebody very wise who said, "Begin to change the world today with one simple act of kindness. Act as though this kindness were the most needed act in the world. It is." So I send you all off to a good night's sleep, and much gratitude, Dr. Gregg, for your wonderful sharing tonight. Thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Todd. Thank you all, and we'll see you at the movies next month. Have a good night.